All right, now I know this is going to sound blasphemous to the gods of music production, but I uninstalled Omnisphere 2. I had to do it. And let me explain why I uninstalled Omnisphere 2. So if you're new here, I'm Game from BusyWorksBeats.com. We've trained over 900,000 producers around the world. Some have gone to work with Drake, Kanye West, Post Malone, Ariana Grande, French Montana, Young Thug, YG, Ray Shremmerd, Trippie Redd, J. Cole, a bunch of Polo G, a bunch of other dope artists around the world. So today I'm going to explain why I uninstalled Omnisphere 2. The simple answer is that it took up way too much space on my computer. So the problem that I had was I have an SSD on my MacBook Pro. Okay, so I'm using a MacBook Pro. I think I have like 1 terabyte of space on the internal drive, meaning the stuff that makes your computer like work on the inside. I have that much space. Now, after you install all the stuff that you need, like Photoshop and all these other apps, it takes up a lot of space. And having all these files that add up, it takes up a lot of space. And the problem that I ran into with the Spectrasonics ecosystem is now when you buy Omnisphere 2, you're not going to stop there. You're going to buy Trillion, you're going to buy Keyscape, you may buy Stylus. And I bought Trillion and Keyscape and Omnisphere and the Sonic extensions, a couple Sonic extensions. So when you buy all those products, you're not just looking at 60 gigs of free space. You're looking at, you have to download 64, then you unload, I don't know, the unload size. So that's like double, okay? Because you have to download it and unpack it. I think that's how it works. I might be wrong about that. Don't quote me. But then you have to think about the other library. So it's 64 gigs of Omnisphere 2. Then Keyscape could be 80 gigs or something. Then all the updates. Then you got Trillion, which is, I'm sure, in the gigs of space. So all that combined could be 200 gigs of space. And I only have a terabyte on my computer. So I ran into the issue where I'm using Omnisphere. The sounds are cool. The sounds are great. I have no problem. I think Spectrasonics is the most innovative as far as the sounds in music production. And the issue I ran into was, okay, I'm running out of system space. Now, how do I use Omnisphere without taking up system space? I thought maybe if I move the Steam folder over to this external hard drive that's an SSD. Terrible idea. Terrible idea to move the Omnisphere library or the Steam folder over to that external hard drive, even though it's an SSD. Ever since I did it, and I don't know if it's something that I did personally or something that I did incorrectly. I'm assuming so, but I didn't know how to fix it because I moved my Steam folder and then it just didn't work the same. Like I was clicking on sounds wouldn't load, or it took a little bit longer to load sounds, which I expected. And it just made the ecosystem feel unusable as soon as I moved it off to the external hard drive. And I was just like, why am I eating up so much space on my main drive and an external for something that doesn't really operate unless it's on my main SSD that I don't have enough space for? I would literally have to rebuy a computer because these MacBooks, I don't think you could swap out the space. So you're kind of like stuck with whatever you buy. I would have to buy like a 2 terabyte and that's $4,000 later. So I just came to the conclusion, I just need to uninstall it and just call it a day. If I want it, I'll re-download it and pull it back in. But for now, I had to ask myself, how often do I go to Omnisphere? I started using Omnisphere like a crutch to where if it's like, it always works. So wherever you are in Omnisphere, it's always going to work. It has a ton of sounds. Most I haven't even gone through. Okay, but it has a gazillion sounds, like tens of thousands of sounds. That's great. It sounds great. I treated it like the Google for my sound selection. And most people confuse Omnisphere 2 with like a general MIDI library, like a Hypersonic or something like this. Omnisphere 2 is more synth based. It's more like retro synths pulled into one thing and all the sounds that you wouldn't get in like a typical keyboard. It doesn't just come with brass and all the typical kind of stuff. That's why they added these Sonic extensions. They're more curated type of sounds. Omnisphere was more of this like smorgasbord of just sounds from dope sound designers that were super pristine, super clean, went on to make hit songs. And I would treat it like Google. So if I wanted, a bell, I would just type in bell. Or if I wanted a flute, type in flute. And again, the issue came when, let me pause the video for a second. Pardon the interruption. I just realized that my buffer length way too low. It started crackling and popping. Okay, but going back to Omnisphere is that you install the thing, you use it like Google, you pull up all these sounds, and as you're making beats, it becomes a crutch. And you forget how many people don't have Omnisphere 2. So you're doing all this work, making all these beats, but you realize a lot of people don't have Omnisphere 2. So even if you pass a project file or, preset, people can't open it up. So I'm going, why am I treating this like a crutch that everybody doesn't have? I'm not really moving towards where I'm trying to go with this. So I had to make the decision to uninstall Omnisphere 2. So I'm on that lonely island where we have uninstalled Omnisphere 2 and we are living without it. So the question is, where do I get my sounds from? The more and more you dig into sounds, and maybe you can relate with this as a music producer or a sound designer or artist, is the more you get into sound design, the more you realize that you just, oh, you know what I realized too? My little limiter just turned off. There we go. I was wondering why I was quiet. Okay. Just clicking all the wrong buttons today. Okay, but what I realized too in going back to Omnisphere 2 and taking it away is that I had to ask myself, how many of these plugins do I really use to start a beat? And then you start feeling like, okay, now I want to use real instruments, because real instruments have a lot of expression to them. I could play a guitar string, I could pluck it, I could hit mute, I could, pick the chords, I could do slides, I could do pitch bends, I could do a lot with the guitar string. But a guitar VST, it has to be programmed to have all these little nuances, or else it doesn't feel like a real instrument, because you feel like you're restricted in the way that it articulates. And so what I'm saying is, after a while, you get Omnisphere, you use it as a crutch. Then you remove the crutch called Omnisphere 2, and you start using your other plugins. As you're using your other plugins, you realize that these are extremely limited because they don't have a lot of depth in the articulation. They don't have, the way I can play a string is 1,000 different ways. I can pick up that guitar behind me and just play it 1,000 different ways. One string, doom, 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 doom. Add more and more harmonics, play it harder and harder. It's like infinite little variations. But in a plugin, you may have 4 variations or 5 or 6. And so it sounds kind of limited because it just doesn't feel like you can express all the way. And the more you dig into melody, you realize that the key to melody is not the notes you're playing. It's the expression you're playing. So for example, there's a plugin called Swam Engine saxophones. So I bought that plugin, and once you use your expression wheel, I use my mod wheel in this case, and I map that to my expression expression fader inside the plugin. So anytime I move the mod wheel, it creates like a different flow to the saxophone. So it might go, as a typical note, but then you go, and then it opens up and it does all this expressive stuff. And I realized, wow, the key to melody is not the notes per se. It's the way you sing the notes. It's the humanization of a note. Like my human voice right now is, more monotone because I just woke up. But if I was more expressive, and if I was super emotional, which I don't talk like this because I feel like it's hyperbole, but people like Gary Vaynerchuk is someone who uses expressive, emotional speech. I don't speak the ups and downs. I just feel like that's a little theatrical for what I'm trying to get across. And great speakers, like any great orator, any president most likely is great, like Obama, for example. He spoke very precise and concise, and he had ideas that Americans. He thought about every word and made sure every word was proper. And what I'm getting to is, in human speech, we have all these variations. And if we're interested in human speeches that way, to where, Obama's, in what A major key as he's speaking, and he has all this expressive tone, and he's pausing and slowing down where he's trying to be more poignant, and then making stuff concise to where it's only one take, then that means our melodies are trying to match the human feel. Like if I speak with a vibrato, don't I sound like I'm sad? Okay, same with your instruments. But if I speak in a higher pitch and more energy and more harmonics, don't I feel happy? And if I speak faster, don't I feel happier? Yes. Okay, so these are the small little things that we subconsciously have in our mind about melody. And so what I'm saying is, the whole lesson that I learned is that a lot of the reason people call your melodies video gamey or like they sound plastic is because they don't have enough articulation. They don't have enough expression within the actual synth or the plugin or the sound. Okay, that's why I made a plugin called Narcos at busyworksbeats.com/Narcos. I'm super proud. We partnered up with Native Instruments. Thank you, Native Instruments, and the NKS program. We partnered up. So basically, they made it super easy for you to install this thing. You download this app called Native Access. Okay, then you enter the serial code after your purchase at busyworksbeats.com/narcos. You enter your serial code into Native Access. It says, okay, cool. You've claimed Narcos. Go to your library and install it now. Click on the library tab, hit install. You download all 18 gigs of Narcos, and then you open up your you download what's called Contact Player, which is completely free from Native Instruments. And then once you have that installed into your DAW, you go right inside of Native Access, and you locate your download for Narcos, which is wherever you downloaded it to. And now you can use that inside of your Contact Player, which again is free. So basically you get Narcos, and then you could use it inside of Native Instruments stuff. It works with Machine. It works in all DAWs. It works in the Contact Player. So I'm proud to partner with Native Instruments. I want to thank you guys for that. Now in my sound design, I don't know if you guys can see, I was just on this Moog yesterday. So there's a Moog Subsequent 37 up top. There's a Prophet 6. Korg Kronos I have over here. You can't see. It's off screen. I have a Machine. I have the FL Key 37. What is that up top? I can't really. That's a MIDI controller. In the middle, we have a Roland Phantom. I think it's F808 technically. We have what is that? The Motif X8. I have the Moog Voyager, the Prophet 08, and then I have a DX7 over there. Yeah, I think it's Yamaha DX7. And, a bunch of sound modules over here as well that I forgot. And a bunch of guitar pedals on the floor. So if you guys want to see more stuff about guitar pedals, let me know in the comments below. I bought a bunch of guitar pedals, and I got lazy and didn't want to do a camera setup because I moved my thing over. But I have stuff like this, the Chase Bliss stuff. And I use all this stuff for sound design. And in my sound designing, I make sure to think like the producer. So when I'm making sounds, I'm going, okay, how do we express our thoughts in music production? We want weird sounds. We want sounds with a flair and a personality. And that's why I created Narcos. It has over 200 sounds. And actually, I want to say over 180 sounds in there. I have to go back to the website to even check. Let me check. Okay, I was right. It does have over 280 sounds in there. So this stuff is handmade, hand curated, sound design, run through guitar pedals, all types of stuff to create a really custom sound. Now, most people, when they're picking sounds with their plasticky type synths, they give you that really stale sawtooth, really stale square wave, really stale sine wave, for example, and they won't do anything to it. So it just sounds basic, and you just raise the volume, lower the volume, depending on how you play. It doesn't have an expressive factor to it. I'm going to speak sound designer-ese for a second, but think about every time you hit a key, it's velocity sensitive and it triggers the cutoff frequency. So every velocity you have, it opens up more and more harmonic content. Or you set that to any modulator or pitch vibrato. So every time you hit it harder, it adds more wobble to the sound. So this is the creative side of sound design. Like me and my best friend Jacob is his name. He made Octave, he made Scorch. We were up in, I think, Montreal in a secret studio. We sound designed for 3 days straight, just nonstop, just sound designing. It was like the craziest synth lab I've ever been in. All these retro synths. It had the Roland 808. It had the Mellotron. It had the stuff that I'm forgetting. The Moog 1. It had the PPG wavetable. It had the Chroma. Like all these rare synths that you can't even buy online, or there'd be like $10,000 plus just to use these synths. Oberheim was crazy. It was the craziest sound I've ever heard. Was the Oberheim. I was just sitting there pressing one key going, what am I listening to right now? It was the most insane detuned brass type sound I've ever heard in my life. And there's a different richness to analog. So I combined all those analog type vibes with some digital ideas and made this unique music producer hybrid called Narcos. So that's at busyworksbeats.com/Narcos. And I'm saying all this to say, once I realized that I'm at a point where I pick sounds that are just, they have to have something about it. It has to stand out. The same way I think about sound is the same way I think about melody. I'm not talking like this, and I do not talk like this because that would be boring. And I do not talk like this because it's just random notes all over the place, but they are the same. Okay, but if I speak like this and I raise my tone, you could see that I'm asking a question. But if I pause and I slow down, you could tell that I'm being more poignant. Leave pauses, dramatic pauses, so that people think about what you're saying. And I thought about all this as I'm sound designing. So if the sounds don't have it built into the sound, it's very hard to get it outside of the sound without doing a gazillion things to it. So that's what I did inside of Narcos. I added that variety. I added all these little things that add to the sound that we're going for. And that's why I uninstalled Omnisphere 2. Not that I hate Omnisphere 2. I actually think Spectrasonics is way beyond any other company as far as like plugins. They've created the master race of plugins. Okay. If AI catches up to how Spectrasonics codes, we're going to have a new renaissance of music production. And I can't wait to see where they're going next. And my point is, I want to challenge myself to use something that stands out. It could be one sound. It could be a shout. It could be a vocal sample. It could be me smacking a guitar. It could be, I don't know. It could be me running something across a string. Something that catches the ear as unique. If you really think about all the old beats that you loved, there's like one thing in that beat that just is so unique. People know about the bed squeak from the 90s R&B sounds, or that from Pony, from Genuine's Pony. It's just such a unique sound that it makes the entire record. And it's such a good sound. If you listen to the sound, it's like, how did they figure out how to sound design this back in the day? It's an amazing sound. Think about, Michael Jackson songs. If you listen to Michael Jackson, in almost every hit song he has, there's like if you listen to every beat, be genius, not my, like listen to all the little like beats, and there's something going on that's unique per beat, whether it's the flute synth in the background, whether it's the orchestra, doom, 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 or if it's doom, 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 doom. It's just something going on. The drums, it's just something. Or the flute that's in the background. There's so many little elements. Or his vocals just doing that hee type stuff. I mean, Michael Jackson is magical, super magical. I even teach you how to mix his multi-tracks in an actual Pro Tools session. I show you every step from how to mix his vocals, mix the drums, mix the bass, and how to master. It's in our mixing fundamentals at premium.busyworksbeats.com. I show you how to mix the all-time legend Michael Jackson. I learned so much just listening to his production and his voice and how everything is set up. It's just a masterpiece. And I'm saying all this to say that what I've had to understand is that what gives us that feel is that variation in the sound. It's the expression of the sound. It's the way we play. We're taking staleness and we're making it more vibrant. And that's why I said, let me challenge myself and uninstall Omnisphere 2 and stop using it as a crutch and try to make all these stale sounds more vibrant. And sometimes it starts with the starting material. Okay. Sometimes you just have the wrong starting material, and it's just that simple. So that's why I made Narcos. And we've been making this for years. I just partnered up with Native Instruments in the NCAS program. So thank you to Native Instruments. Again, it has 280 sounds plus in there. And it's super easy to install. You don't need Kontakt. It's called the Kontakt Player, which is completely free. And then you load up Narcos inside of the Kontakt Player. Okay. So that's how it works. Just go to busyworksbeats.com/Narcos. I'll leave a link below. But my whole goal with this video is to explain why I uninstalled Omnisphere 2 from Spectrasonics. I know it sounds like I'm a crazy lunatic and heresy and all types of blasphemy to the music production space, but I just had to come to the conclusion I need more space on my computer to do videos, to do operating things. I was always finding myself on my MacBook with like 3 gigs left, and then it was so hard to get stuff done because I don't have enough like operating space. And I was like, there's something that's big on my computer that I have to get rid of. And boom, it was all the Spectrasonics libraries. They just all went. I didn't just uninstall 1 or 2. I uninstalled them all. And even though I'm missing the Trillium bass, I was going to use that last night on a track. So even though I'm missing the Trillium bass, I had to find a way around that. And that's my conclusion to why I installed Omnisphere 2. So I want you guys to subscribe if you're new. Let's talk about music production stuff. Let's have some fun on this channel. We do more than just beat making. I like to be well-rounded, but I like to be focused on music production stuff and always stem from that point out. So I want to thank you guys. Subscribe if you're new. Peace.